This was about 14 or 15 years ago. So we're talking 2007, 2008,
Mhm,
correct?
mhm,
In my opinion, Jamie Kern Lima is the reason why we have this real beauty movement. There always has to be the first person,
mm,
and she was it. So when you look around the internet and social media and you see people doing naked faces, that was not something people did in 2007. It was all airbrush. It was all perfection. That was the beauty standard. There were no plus size or curvy models. That was
mhm,
not a thing back then. And so you've got a woman who is sitting in Seattle, who has no experience and no money, deciding that she is going to not only figure out how to create a makeup line for people who have issues with their skin, but that she's going to do something nobody has ever done, which is put real, normal people like you and me into her campaigns when she finally gets this figured out. And she's going to show people what her skin actually looks like in order to sell it. I mean, that was a revolutionary idea. She was the first. And I'm telling you this because you could be the first. You have something inside of you that is a problem, something that you can solve. And you could be the first to change the way that people think about an issue. And so, Jamie, let's pick up the story because how do you go from this aha moment, like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, to doing something? Because I
yes.
think some of us have aha moments, right?
Yep, and then we
But we
doubt
don't
him.
do anything.
Yes, because we doubt him, we
Yes.
doubt him. We think like, "Oh, someone's already done it,"
Yes.
or, "Oh, whatever." First of all, if you're out there right now and you think, "Oh, you have an idea or a way you wanna show up in the world or someone else you wanna help, but you think, 'Oh, someone's already done it.'" Literally, there's only one of you in the entire universe, which by definition means no one has ever done it the way you're gonna do it. So,
Mm.
when I launched this
Say that again, Jamie, for the people that are like, whoa, 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 kids, calm down. Wait, Jamie just said something. I was doing my dishes. Say that again. Talk about the fact that this matters.
This is huge because I think the biggest reason we talk ourselves out of things is we think, "Oh, someone's already done it.
Yes.
Someone's already done it before, who must be smarter than me or more talented or more whatever it is than me." And what I have learned and then proven, and I wanna tell you too about I'm gonna get so excited, Mel, because no, when you do this thing, like, don't be shocked then when there's millions and millions of rejections and people don't get it, right? Because it's never been done before, right?
Oh,
Because
yes.
there's only one of you doing it the way you're gonna do it, but just to recap that, there is literally only one of you in the entire universe, right? And so if you are gonna show up to this world authentic, that means whatever you do, if it's authentic to you, it's actually by definition, it's never been done before,
Hmm.
right? And so when you show up that way, don't be surprised if not everyone gets it right away. Or, in my case, all the experts I put on pedestals all said no. That this idea of how I wanted to connect with women, they thought it wouldn't work and they thought I wouldn't therefore make them any money.
So, but can I ask you a question
Yeah,
real quick? How did you go from the aha
yes,
to starting? So, what did
yes,
that look like? Like, because I
yep,
think, like, if you're in this space where, let's just use an example. You've never actually you don't know the first you have this thing about catering that you
yep,
just can't get it out of your head. You wanna do these events, you've never actually done this because you had never
yes,
done anything with makeup. You had
yep,
no idea what you were doing.
yep.
You have an idea and you have an aha moment.
Mhm.
What was the first thing that you did to start to make this real?
So leaning on that, why I had to do it and why
Mhm.
it felt like it was going to be part of my purpose was a
Mhm.
big thing that helped me actually take the risk, quit my job.
Wait, you
And
quit your job because you had an aha moment?
yeah, it was deep. I was like, if I had
What did it
all,
feel like?
it felt like, if I didn't do it, I would wake up the rest of my life with this pain in my gut, this longing, knowing I was created for more. It felt like if I didn't do it, I would have the pain of regret. And
Mm.
if I did do it, I might have the pain of failure and maybe the pain of embarrassment and then maybe the pain of, oh, wow, that doesn't feel like it went how I thought it was. I knew it was this big risk. I
Yeah.
knew I was leaving what I thought was my dream job.
Why did you have to
Um,
quit your job? Just curious.
it was literally from day 1, I was all in. Like, I dove all in. I knew if I was gonna do this, I needed to just go all in on it. And, I started I do not recommend this, but I started working, like, 100-hour weeks from the beginning. I was so freaking passionate about it. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about, "What if I can actually figure this out? What if I can literally" 'cause it became a
So
big
did you have
dream.
any savings? Like, do you have a little bit of
Very
savings?
little
Because you didn't
savings.
pay yourself for the first 3 years that you did this.
First 3 years. So, basically, my husband and I wrote this business plan, right?
Yep.
Quit our jobs, dove all in our living room. We poured all of our savings into it. I thought, Mel, and this is for someone watching us right now, I know this. I thought if I can figure the product out, it's gonna be huge.
Right.
And then I realized, like, oh, being an entrepreneur or launching a dream is not always that easy. We poured every penny we had into it, and once we actually created a product by and we were scrappy. If you
And
wanna
how
know
did you
how.
create a product? Like, are you in your
Yeah.
kitchen buying stuff at the grocery store, or how does this even work?
Okay, so no, so so first, I love that, technology is right there, right? So researching how are makeup formulations made, who makes them, what are the FDA regulatory compliance, all the unsexy stuff I know nothing about, just diving into the research phase of how does this happen. And then what I learned is that manufacturers are makeup companies' closest held secrets, right? Like closest held secrets. They won't disclose who they work with, but a
Hmm.
lot of these big manufacturers work with all the top brands that you see or a handful of them.
Gotcha.
So I
So
started.
so are you saying that all of the brands and top brands that you see are basically manufactured by a handful of companies?
Yes,
Okay,
handful of
got it.
companies, and then some do it in-house as well.
Gotcha.
So what I did was scrappy. I walked into a Sephora, I wrote down the name of every single brand in there, went home. I had no money, right? Cold call every single brand and saying like, "Oh, I'm looking for a really great manufacturer. Could you let me know who you And then they hang up on me. You know what I mean? One after another, after another, after another. And I got this really small brand in a totally different kind of positioning where the girl who answered said, "Oh, here's who we use. They're in New York City, blah, blah, blah." So that was my first manufacturer. Reached out to them, had a meeting in person, had no money, poured this idea out to them. They took a risk making me samples. And that's how it started, was just really being scrappy and trying to figure it out. All of our money had went into the product development formula and the
Yep.
advisory board of the product.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, now we have a product that works for me, right? This was after hundreds of formula iterations. I thought that was going to be it.
So is this like year 1 or year 2? Like, how long did this take?
Yeah, it took a good first year to get
Okay.
that product. And then what I started doing was sending it to everyone I thought was just going to believe in me instantly. So I sent it to Sephora and Ulta Beauty and all the department stores and all of the online retailers, QVC, which is, live television shopping channel. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be huge. Every single one of them said no after no after no after no. And to your point, it became 3 years of not being able to pay myself, 3 years of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's, of crying myself to sleep at night.
Were you and your
Um,
husband, like, fighting like crazy? Like, "You should go back to work. You should but why do we do that?" Like, were you, like, doing
you
that?
you wanna know what it was? We
Yeah.
still believed in it, but we weren't sure how we were gonna make it. It was, like, friends and family that were like, wait, you quit your job? Are you sure you should have quit your job?" Or, "Wait, you still haven't made any money? Like, it's been 3 years," right? So you hear all of this, the voices get so loud.
Yeah.
The loudest, though, were my own self-doubt. Sometimes we take a chance and go for something because our gut is telling us to do it, and then all of a sudden you face all this opposition and you start to question, is my gut wrong? Is my knowing wrong? And there were so many times where I would literally get this another brutal no from, Sephora or QVC or whoever it was. And I would just literally cry myself to sleep. I would pray about it and be like, God, I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this, but nothing is going right.
So, let's just pause in that moment because I get a lot of questions from listeners who, because of the things that have happened in their past,
Yeah.
they don't know how to trust their intuition.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of questions about decision making and how to truly, in a situation like this, where you are burning through your entire life savings,
Yeah.
You have left your dream job. You have gotten no after no after no after no after no. How do you stay connected to your intuition in a
Mhm,
situation like that?
mhm,
What tool do you have or what advice can you give to somebody who's having trouble hearing what the right decision is
mhm.
in that kind of situation?
Yeah. So I think that intuition is like a muscle that we build
Mhm.
over time. And I think it's a lifelong journey that, to really learning how to hear it and to trust it. And one of the greatest tools I think is to go back, think back to times in your life where maybe you had this gut feeling to do something and everyone around you said, don't do it. So you listen to them, you didn't trust yourself, and then think about what happened. Right. And then similarly, go back to a time where everyone was like, "Oh, no way, no way." And you're like, "But I love him. I don't think he's lying. I think his phone really did break 5 times every weekend. He didn't disappear, his phone." Like, right, think about, like, that situation when everyone was telling you something and you didn't listen, or even your gut was telling you, right? And you didn't listen, and you think back to those times and you start to develop pattern recognition
Mm.
of how it felt in moments in your life when you trusted yourself or didn't, and what happened. And you get better attuned to what that feels like. So,
What does it feel like for you
I
in both
feel,
situations? Like, can you describe what it feels like for you when you're like, "Yep, nope, that's a no." And what
yes.
does it feel like for you when you're like, "I'm sticking with this"?
Yeah. Often it's the tiniest of feelings in my gut, right? Some people describe it as like a still small voice. I pray about it. I ask God to give me the answers and I try to live the answers.
Do you feel the answers that God gives you? Like, is that what happens for you when you do this?
Like right now, when I look at you, right?
Yeah?
Like I know you're a beautiful soul, right? I just know it. You know it. You feel it. Like I feel like you have good, like you're good. You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
feeling, right? And we get these feelings, but so much around us is so loud.
Mm.
And we just learn over time. And by the way, not to go, this could be a whole other episode, but especially as women from the time we're young, we learn not to trust ourselves. We walk in to our parents fighting and we go, "Is everything okay?" They're like, "Everything's great. Everything's great." Right? To protect us, we start to learn to
You're like,
doubt ourselves.
"Baloney." Yep.
Right? But
Uh-huh.
or, especially as young girls, you learn to make decisions by consensus
Mm.
often with your friends,
Or
and you
making other people happy.
making other people happy. People pleasing, we're rewarded for pleasing everyone else and almost ignoring what we feel. So if you're someone who's an adult right now going, I don't even know how to hear my own gut or trust myself, that's why we've been trained out of learning how to do it, right? So it takes intentionality and really deciding, oh, you know what, I'm going to put in some time, even if it's 5 minutes a day, just to thinking about moments in my life where I trusted myself, where I didn't. And if you don't remember any of them, start now.
You know what you just inspired me to think about?
Hmm.
I don't even know if it's possible to do this, but imagine if you could go through the rest of today and only make decisions that align with what you truly want. If you
Yes.
don't want to go to that party tonight, don't go. If a friend asks you something and you feel obligated out of guilt to lend them that thing, don't actually lend them the thing.
Yeah.
Eat what you want to eat tonight for dinner. Don't just go to wherever your friends want to go. Like, I think that would be a real eye opening experiment if you were to do that.
And you start building that muscle, right? And the more you do that, some people don't even pay attention to what they actually want to eat for dinner. They're just like, what sounds good to everyone? But to your point, when you start paying
Hmm.
attention, then you also start building that knowing of hearing your own knowing.
Do you think it's possible to discover your unique purpose in life if you are not connected and listening to your intention and intuition? I mean,
And your own intuition. Here's how I think I think it's way more likely, and you're going to actually discover more than one purpose
mm,
often if you're really tuned in to your intuition and you're intentional about it. But what I'll say for someone who feels like they can't hear their gut but they still want to find their purpose, a friend of mine, Rory Vaden, says that your best position to serve the person you once were, right? Trent Shelton, our friend, says one day the things you're going through right now will be the things you made it through.
Yeah.
And what I would say to someone listening right now is look at something in the past that has broken your heart, that has caused you grief, that has been something that you care deeply about, whether it's
Mm.
positive or negative, that you've gone through, something you care deeply about, or maybe pain you've gone through, something you have made it through. I believe often when we go through the hardest times in our life,
Yep.
it's for one of two reasons.
What are they?
It is to either equip us with the strength we need to carry the weight of our success that's to come, to
Mm.
carry the weight of our purpose that's to come, or we've gone through these horrible, unspeakable times, things we would never want to happen to us again in our life, because we're actually going to get our greatest source of fulfillment and purpose by one day helping someone else who's going through them.
I
And
love that saying that you're best equipped to help the person you used to be.
yes,
If you can choose not to drink for 300 days because you know it doesn't serve you, you can choose not to drink in moments that are wildly confronting. And you have not lost progress at all. All of the hard work that you've done for more than 300 days in a row are still in your neural pathways. It's still in your nervous system. And beating yourself up is going to make you feel disempowered. It's going to make you feel unmotivated to continue to do the work to stay sober and to make the choice that actually empowers you. One of the things that I believe that you need to come up with is mechanisms to coach yourself through those moments. And those mechanisms can be anything from, oh, when you notice the feelings coming up, naming the feelings. Do I actually want to drink or do I just feel uncomfortable right now? Simply asking yourself that question when you feel triggered is a way to become more conscious of what's driving you. The second thing that you should always do, no matter what, is always have some alternative beverage that you're excited about. Make sure that you've got a non-alcoholic wine, or you've got a kombucha, or you've got one of the number of non-alcoholic spirits that are out there, or non-alcoholic beers, so that you can raise your wine glass so you can feel included without needing to break the promise that you have with yourself.
Well, I was able to get through the whole party. It's when I got home.
Oh, now that's interesting. So what
Yeah,
happened when you got home?
that's when I went in the fridge and I found the champagne and I went up and watched a Lifetime movie or drank my champagne.
And so when you got home, what were you feeling?
I was like, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel so weird? It was like I was looking at myself and not knowing what to do next.
Where was
You
your
know,
husband?
we have to learn how to be uncomfortable with being, or be comfortable with being uncomfortable, is what they say.
Well, do you believe that?
No, that's what somebody said.
Correct. You have to learn how to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Do you believe that?
I'm not comfortable with that. No.
Okay, but what I'm asking you is, do you actually want to learn how to do that?
Yes.
Okay. And tell me why you stopped drinking.
Because it was a habit that I was dealing with just about every day.
You're not going to like what I'm about to say. I think you need to go to 90 meetings in 90 days and truly get to the bottom of why you no longer want to drink and the role that alcohol played in helping you avoid uncomfortable feelings. Because if you were to go to 90 meetings in 90 days and just sit and listen, it would be very uncomfortable. And I think it would also provide a level of support that you need in order to have a profound breakthrough. And I also believe that this is happening for a reason. It's happening because you've done so much work on yourself, and this is now requiring you to level up. You want to go make a huge difference with people, and you want to coach people in being able to form better habits. If you put on the I'm a student of truly understanding how to live in discomfort, and I'm going to put myself in a situation that I don't want to go to, because I can tell you don't want to do this, do you?
No. But I wouldn't mind having a breakthrough.
I think this is a bigger deal than you're saying it is. And it's just because of the casual nature of the way that you're talking to me about it. And I want you to have a huge breakthrough in this. And I believe you told me this because you knew I wouldn't pussyfoot around with it.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And your clients are going to need that from you. And that's why you need it from me. Now, we got to take a short break, but when we come back, Liza, you're going to tell us, what can we count on you for? Welcome back. So I had just asked Liza to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Liza, what can I count on you for?
My commitment that I will definitely go to meetings.
How many meetings? See, this is
The thing is 90 meetings in 90 days. That's what my friend did.
I don't care about your friend. What are you going to do?
Well, maybe there's a reason why this stuff is out there.
That's not the answer to the question. What are you going to do? See, you're uncomfortable right now, so you're getting squirmy. Because what I feel right now is if we were to end this coaching conversation right now, I would bet all the money in the world that you don't do it. Because I don't hear commitment from you. I hear I need some wiggle room. And I also don't hear that you see the value in this, that you see the opportunity. I'm not shaming you. I hear the power in you. I hear
right. I have the power. I just don't know if meetings are the thing for me.
I didn't ask you if they were the thing for you. Is it working for you to do this on your own?
Most of the time, but maybe.
Clearly not. You're asking for advice.
Right.
We think that we can do it on our own. It's a hell of a lot easier when you get support. And if you don't have a problem with alcohol, and sitting in a meeting for 90 days won't trigger you. Because you'll be there as a student figuring out, what does it look like when people are breaking through things that make them uncomfortable? What does it look like to tell the truth? But I think you're going to discover that there are layers and layers and layers and layers of this, and probably history in your family and God, who knows what else, that you have not gotten to the bottom of. And the opportunity for your growth is to confront this head on. And there's no shame in this.
I want to. This is probably the best way to do it.
If you want to, why would you question whether or not going to 90 meetings 90 days in a row would make a difference?
I don't know. I just never thought it was for me.
I think it's scary to consider that maybe you need more help than you think. I think the issue is truly saying, I have an issue with alcohol and I need support. That saying that you don't is a way to try to keep control. And stepping into the unknown and saying, this is a real issue for me and I need support and I'm going to go to 90 meetings in 90 days because it's fucking uncomfortable. And I'm going to
Oh, yeah.
see what happens. And I think you're going to have a huge breakthrough. And I think that breakthrough is going to have nothing to do with alcohol.
Oh yeah, it's got to be deep seated because it's been since I was 16 or something, really.
Now we're getting somewhere. This is a coping mechanism. You reach for alcohol when you're uncomfortable. And you're not the only one. And so there's a couple rules here coming out of this coaching conversation. Number one, do not make yourself wrong. I am so proud of you. I am proud of you for the 300 days. I am proud of you for asking this question. I am proud of you for telling me what you did, because underneath that, I hear somebody that knows that she is sick of this shit and who's willing to say so, and who's also scared to death of what you're going to find on the other side of this. So I need you to hear that I think you're awesome. Okay? Second thing, 90 meetings in 90 days, and walk in there with an open mind and use it just like you have used sobriety as a way to get to know yourself better. It's just an experience. That's all that it is. And then number 3, stop making yourself wrong. Stop making yourself wrong.
I'm not wrong.
Stop making yourself wrong. Okay?
Maybe I need help.
We all do. We all do. And I'm proud of you for going to get it.
Thank you very much.
I'm really proud of you. It's okay to break down. I can see you trying to hold it together.
Oh yeah, my jaw.
What's
killing me.
well, so stop. What's coming up for you?
It's probably some form of relief.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Oh, it's always a release for me to cry. It's just makes me feel better.
I think it's a lot of work to hold on to habits, patterns that no longer serve us. It's not easy, but there's a lot of effort that goes into keeping something that's broken in place. And I think there is a whole new life on the other side of this for you.
I'm ready.
I can tell. I can't wait to hear how it goes. And just know that I'm here cheering for you every step of the way. I love you. Ultimately, you want to know what a fuck it moment is? It's a moment when you get triggered. You're just overwhelmed with emotion. That's it. It's an inability to handle uncomfortable emotions. And so we say, fuck it. We go, let's numb out. Let's check out. Let's just check out. Let's throw in the towel. And I'm here to tell you those moments are normal and you can tolerate those uncomfortable feelings. It's almost like instead of chucking the towel, throwing in the towel, like I wanted to do with my holiday cards, how about you visualize wringing the towel out instead? That almost sitting with that rise of negative emotion is a lot like letting a towel soak in the water, and then you're just going to take a deep breath and you're going to wring that towel out. And then you can like shake it out too. And this is so important because this is also a skill that you need. And if you can have the courage to admit what's going on and what's not working, if you can gather up the strength and the self-awareness to go, oh, I think I'm having a fuck it moment. I'm like ready to throw in the towel on this thing. I'm only 7 days into not doing dairy and I want to kill my entire family because I'm so irritable. Oh, this is a fuck it moment. I'm ready to just be like, that's it. I don't want to date you anymore, instead of having the conversation because I don't like the emotions that I'm feeling. Recognize it, because tolerating uncomfortable emotion and then supporting yourself in creating the ability and the skills to stick to your goals and to chip away at who you want to become. That's what we're going to talk about in the very next episode of this series, which is the science of habits. Because habits are the behaviors that you engage in that help you become the person you want to become. And we're going to talk about how you break the habits that make you feel like shit, like throwing in the towel when you feel uncomfortable emotions. And we're also going to talk about how to create new habits, ones that make you feel better. Well, there's a lot that we've covered in this short little episode, and I want to make sure that you do not miss a beat. And so make sure that you, and so let me recap all of this, and you want to listen all the way to the end because there's a lot that we covered. Number one, the fuck it moment, it is coming. Number two, when that fuck it moment happens, do not make yourself wrong. Number three, fuck it moments, they're actually really good. You know what a fuck it moment means? It means that as you are pushing yourself and as you're taking on new stuff and as you're attempting and trying to change, a fuck it moment happens when you are expanding your capacity for new behavior and for new experiences. A fuck it moment happens because you have to shed that old stuff that is stored in your nervous system, and you have to shed these old behavior patterns. And that stuff like sends shockwaves through your system. And here's the other thing. Handled correctly, these moments, they help you grow. And I also want you to remember, yep, they're going to rise up, but they also pass. And what helps me whenever they come up, did you notice in my story what I did repeatedly? I told people. See, when I talk to my colleagues, or I talk to my husband, or I talk to my family, or I talk to my friends as something's coming up, it helps me process it. And instead of just venting at people, just say, hey, I'm going through something. Do you have the capacity right now to let me just vent for a minute so that people know it's not about them and that your frustration has nothing to do with them, and that they're also okay to hear it and that they're not going to get like their own fuck it moment by listening to you. The most important relationship that you have in life, and that's the relationship you have with yourself. I am going to introduce you to a habit that I want you to practice immediately. It is a habit that is based on profound research, and it is a habit that will help you improve the relationship you have with yourself. It will impact your happiness, your sense of control, your confidence. This is the Mac Daddy of all habits. You master this habit, you improve the relationship you have with yourself, and this is like the first domino. You know how in dominoes, when you line them up, there's that one domino that, boom, you knock that sucker over and woohoo, I can't even, all the other dominoes fall. So we are talking about the gateway to creating a positive ripple effect in your life and improving the relationship with yourself. And also, it is the secret, this habit, to self-acceptance and self-love. We know we should love ourselves. We should be kind to ourselves. We should accept ourselves. But nobody knows how to do it. And that's what this entire episode is about. I am going to boil the how down to one extraordinarily simple habit backed by a crazy amount of research that we will link to, and my own research study involving 175,000 people from 91 countries who tried this habit for 5 days in a row. So that means we've got data points that stack up to 175,000 times 5. I don't even know what that number is, but it's pretty big. This works. It's high-fiving yourself every morning in the mirror as part of your morning routine. That's it. And I've got the research to prove it. I've got studies to prove it. And what we have found based on our research is that it takes less than 5 days for you to have an absolutely profound breakthrough in your relationship to yourself by simply adding a high five in the mirror once a morning to your morning routine after you brush your teeth. And at the end of this episode, I want you to stick around because you are going to hear one of the most profound testimonials ever about the impact that one high five made on a woman's life named Chris. Like, you're going to need to bring the Kleenex because this is so goosebump, empowering, and encouraging and exciting. I'm not kidding. This is profound, profound, profound. And I know that you struggle with self-love because none of us know how to do it. I get questions on this every single freaking day. How do I love myself? I know I need to love myself, Mel, like this one from Maria.
Hi, Mel. This is Maria from Spain. Can you explain how to learn to love yourself? I know I need to love myself as a part of my self-growth, but no one tells you how to do that. I'm curious, is there something I can do about that?
I love this question because she's right. We all know we need to love ourselves, but how the hell do you do that when nobody has taught you how? I think the main reason why this concept of self-love is so hard to implement in our lives is because of the definition of love. If you look in the dictionary, love is defined as a feeling, but that's not what it is. Love is an action. And let's just take an example from your life. When you feel loved by somebody else, it's because of how they treat you. It's because of what they say to you. Like, for example, when Chris brings me a cup of coffee in the morning, I feel loved because of that action. When he says, I love you, Mel, I feel loved because of the action of speaking those words. But when it comes to loving ourselves, we're sitting around waiting for the feeling, and yet we're not recognizing the truth about love. You feel loved by other people when they demonstrate it through actions. The secret to self-love is demonstrating to yourself through your own actions toward yourself that you love yourself. And that's why the simple solution to having a breakthrough in loving yourself, the first domino that needs to fall, is something that I call the high five habit. This is a simple habit that I created that boiled down is simply adding a high five in the mirror to yourself, to your morning routine. That's what the high five habit is. Now, one of the reasons why I love this habit is because it has so much research. And the habit's very simple. When you wake up tomorrow morning, get yourself out of bed, go into the bathroom, brush your teeth, and then after you brush your teeth, you're going to put your toothbrush down. And the reason why I want you to do it after you brush your teeth is because I want to use some science called habit stacking. I want this to be part of your morning routine, what you're about to do. And so I want you to do it right after something that you do every morning, brushing your teeth. That way your brain will encode this high five habit even faster. And here comes the most important part. As you put the toothbrush down, you are going to look in the mirror. This is the hardest part of the high five habit. You're going to look in the mirror, and I don't want you to look through the person in the mirror. I want you to realize there's a human being that's standing in the mirror there with you every morning in the bathroom, and you have either ignored them or you have looked at all of the things you don't like about that person, whether it's the weight that you've put on or it's the bags under your eyes, or for me, it's one boob hanging lower than the other boob. You sit there and judge that person, or based on our research and studies, 50% of men and women cannot or will not look at themselves in the mirror. And the reason is so freaking sad. It's because they don't like the person they've become, or they have so many regrets in life about things that they did or the place that they thought that they would be that they can't and won't look at themselves in the mirror. And if you can't look at yourself in the mirror, let's just stop at that right there, because what do you do with somebody you love? What's the action when you see somebody you love? You look them in the eyes. That gaze, eye to eye, gives you not only dopamine, but the oxytocin that is in your brain. It is powerful. It's an act of love to really make eye contact and hold a gaze with love and compassion behind it. So if you can't do that and you're not doing that, you're every morning demonstrating not love, you're demonstrating rejection and criticism. And so first step of the high five habit, you are going to put your toothbrush down and you're going to look at yourself in the eye. And it's going to feel weird if you don't normally do this. And the next part of this is very simple. Whenever you feel ready, you're going to raise your hand and you're going to high five the person you see in the mirror. Now, one of two things will happen when you do this. And again, I have so much data on this. I know because we've studied what happens. What's going to happen when you go to high five the mirror is you will either laugh out loud, and you'll laugh out loud because it's kind of dorky and funny. That's what I did the first time I high fived myself in the mirror. But you're also laughing because your brain recognizes a high five. And so one of the coolest things about high fiving yourself in the mirror is the science involved. It's called neurobics. You're using research in a field called neurobics, which is when you marry a physical action with a new positive thought you want to create. They've studied this at MIT. They've studied it all over the world. It is the fastest way to create new neural pathways and new thought patterns, to marry physical action like a high five with a new thought. And here's where the high five in the mirror gets really cool. So you're leveraging neurobics, all of this sort of physical activity plus neuroscience. You're also getting the benefit of the release of dopamine. You're also getting the benefit of the fact that your brain and your body knows what a high five is because you've been high fiving people your whole life, right? You've seen high fives in sports on television. You know exactly what a high five is. A high five is something that you give somebody, a physical action, when you're cheering for them, when you're encouraging them. A high five is something that you give to somebody when you're proud of them. Great shot. Good job on that test. And a high five is also something that you give to another human being whenever they need encouragement. So think about like standing on the side of a road race. You don't cross your arms and scowl at people. You high five people and cheer for them because you're trying to say, I see you. I see that this race is hard. Keep going. You got this. If you're on a sports team and you blow a play when you come to the huddle, a high five from a coach or a teammate says, shake it off. I believe in you. Now get back in the game. And so what's so cool about this high five habit to yourself in the mirror is that a lifetime of positive programming, neurologically already in your brain, gets aimed right back at your reflection. And so you are physically demonstrating with this simple habit in less than 5 seconds every single morning that you, yes, you take actions that show that you believe in, you love, and you encourage the person in the mirror. Now, another reason why I love this habit is you don't have to think anything. All of the wiring that is already in your brain and in your nervous system, it does the work for you silently. As I mentioned, there is so much research, and we're going to just put dozens and dozens and dozens of studies. But I want to also point out that there are 2 studies that are really important. One of them was done with the NBA, and I'm just going to cut to the chase on this study. They wanted to know if there were any habits that winning teams had that the losing teams in the NBA didn't have in the preseason. And it turned out, after crunching all the data, and this has been verified by the Wall Street Journal too, beyond the study that these scientists did, that the top 4 teams in the NBA, in fact, do have a habit in the preseason that the losing teams do not. You want to know what that habit is? You guessed it. They have more high fives, fist bumps, pats on the back in the preseason among team members than any of the other teams. Why? Well, because a high five isn't just an action and a physical gesture that means nothing. A high five actually says, I am with you. It builds trust, it builds partnership, it builds belief, and you can build that back in yourself by adding the high five in the mirror every single morning as part of your morning routine. There was another study done with kids where they made a bunch of kids take these math tests, and these researchers wanted to know what's the best way to encourage someone through a challenging moment. And they found that it wasn't words of encouragement like, hey, you're a great student. It wasn't the growth mindset words like, hey, really admire how hard you're working. You want to know the single best way to motivate kids to do something challenging? It's to say nothing and to give them a high five. This was so profound that the researchers, and we'll link to this study, changed the name of the study to include the surprising power of a high five, the surprising motivational power of a high five. That's how exciting this is. And I think you can hear this because I stumbled onto this by mistake. I started high-fiving myself right after I had gotten fired, basically, from hosting my own talk show. And I needed to give myself like a pick-me-up. And I just instinctually one morning raised my hand and high-fived the mirror. And the immediate effect that I felt of the dopamine in my mind and the boost in my mood and this sense of, okay, I got it. I can do this. I can face this. Having my own back, demonstrating it to myself during a really low moment, it was the beginning, that first domino that fell, of an entirely new relationship with myself. It's what led me to get into intensive therapy and to start getting serious about my happiness. And I think everything comes back to you and the relationship that you have with yourself. And so we're going to go deep on this because the relationship that you have with yourself is the single most important thing in the world. And in addition to sharing this research and this simple habit with you, I want to unpack some of the things that people experience when they do it, because I've had so many questions about this, like this one from Teresa.
How do I stop beating myself up and forgive myself for my past mistakes?
I can't believe how many years you waste beating yourself up for past mistakes. And the reason why we do that is we don't know how to forgive ourselves, because we don't know how to accept ourselves. We don't know how to accept the failures, the regrets, the disappointments. We don't know how to accept, we don't know how to love ourselves through it. And that's where, honest to God, this simple habit of demonstrating it every morning in the mirror as part of your morning routine changes everything. And we got to take a short break for our sponsors, but don't you dare go anywhere, because I have so much to share with you, and I'm going to invite my husband, Chris, to come and join us. Because when I first shared this high five habit thing that I had discovered a couple years ago with him, when I first stumbled into doing it for myself, he thought it was the stupidest thing he had ever heard. And of course, because I'm relentless and annoying, I was like, but you got to do it for 5 days. You got to try it. You got to try. And what happened when he tried it for 5 days was both life-changing, profound, and it was heartbreaking for me to hear as a spouse just how much my husband was struggling, and how the simple assignment of looking yourself in the eyes was impossible for him to do at that time. I want to tell you a quick story about how perspective changing things can be, and then we're going to hear your story, Amy. So I remember when I was in law school, right?
Yeah.
I grew up in a teeny tiny town in Michigan, and then I go to college in a teeny tiny town in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And I was sort of like your meat and potatoes kind of gal. I was not the biggest experimental eater like I am now. And I remember one of my really good friends, shout out to Sydney, she was a super cool lady, and she grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, and she was multicultural family, like super cool. And I remember she invited me to leave the campus, the law school campus, and go into Boston.
Okay.
To this restaurant called Jay's. And her boyfriend, who was older, was going to take the two, law school students with no money out. And it was a Thai restaurant. And I had never been in a Thai restaurant before. And so we sit down. I had no idea what to order. And so they just order the pad Thai. When this thing arrived in front of my plate there. When this
What'd
plate
you
was,
think when you saw that pad Thai that you'd never seen before?
I was like, what the hell is the eggs and chicken and shrimp and these noodles? And it's like pasty, tacky, weird texture and peanuts and bean sprouts. So I just shoveled a fork in and I just took a bite. It was like a unicorn in my mouth. It was the most delicious thing I had ever. And I had this thought. There is an entire world I have been missing out on because I just didn't know. I just didn't know.
Yes.
And that is what this conversation's about. It's like a pad Thai for your career. There is a whole world that you have not considered as seriously as I want you to because you just didn't know. Like I didn't know you could make money online. You know, Amy's the kind of person that knows how to tap into that confidence that is inside you to make a pivot. And I know that reinvention is a hot topic. Our project on Audible, Reinvent Your Life with Mel Robbins, is #1 on Audible. Everybody is feeling this need to change something about their lives. And when you take your career and your ability to make money into an entirely different level, it's extraordinary how that impacts your life. And Amy has been able to not only teach herself how to do that, but to teach so many other people how to do that, how to find financial freedom, how to get control of your time, how to create a life where you get to work when and where and with whomever you want to work. And do not tune this out. This is possible for you. I don't care what your life looks like right now. This is possible for you. And that's why I wanted Amy to sit here and give you a zero-cost masterclass in thinking differently and taking control of your freaking life starting today. So Amy, what was your pad thai moment in your career?
My pad thai moment was 14 years ago. I was working for peak performance coach Tony Robbins, and I had an amazing job. I was the director of content, traveling the world, working on the content that he did on stage. However, I didn't realize in that moment that I had never been free. And here's what happened. Tony brought in a bunch of business owners to the San Diego office. They happened to be all men, and they were making money online. And so he brought them into this office. It was this big oak table, and I was called in to take notes. So
Okay, so first of all,
yes.
Were you annoyed by that?
Well, it was kind of common for the content department to take notes. But yeah, there's a little bit of me like, I want to be in the action. I want to be doing the things. But yeah, I was on a side table.
Oh, so you were not even at the big table with the boys.
No.
You were on the side
I was on the side.
taking the notes.
Yes.
Okay.
So here I came into this meeting, but thank God I did, because here's what happened. I started to take notes, and these guys started to talk about their businesses, what they do, what life looks like, what their lifestyle is, what their family life looks like. Like, they were really talking about their whole experience as business owners. And all of a sudden I realized, wait a second. They're working when they want, where they want, how they want. They're creating these amazing products. They're being as creative as they want to be. They're on their own time and on their own dime. And I realized I have never been free. I have never been my own boss. I will always hit a glass ceiling. I will always have to ask for a raise, always have to ask if I could take vacation. I was not the boss of my own life or my business. And in that moment, a light bulb went off, and I thought, I want it. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't know how to do any of it, but I want it. And so that was the moment for me. But the next thing that happened was this flood of doubt. And I looked to my friend who was in the meeting with me, and I said, I have no skill where I could be my own boss. I know nothing that I could be my own boss.
I want to stop right there, because I think this moment where you're sitting in a meeting and you experience something.
Yeah.
This like wake up call happens in your body. And I've had a moment like that. It's way bigger than a pad thai moment.
Yeah.
I was sitting in an audience, and I was at an Oprah Winfrey, like kind of one of these live your best life tours. This would have been a decade ago, decades ago, actually, probably 2 decades ago at this point. And I was there because I was networking to try to get clients for my life coaching business. I had just started this on the side. I was working full time, doing business development for a advertising agency in the big tech kind of bubble that happened in the early 2000 timeframe. And on the side, I was trying to build a business as a life coach, full of doubt. So I go to this Oprah Winfrey concert. It was actually it was like an event that she held, a one-day summit to like live your best life. And so I'm sitting in the big audience, and Oprah's on stage, and then she introduces this woman that I'd never heard of. Her name was Martha Beck. And Martha Beck walks out, and I don't even remember what the hell she said. I had never heard of her. I had no clue what she did, but she started talking, and there was something inside of me that was like, I want that. And it was the same thing you're talking about, which is this taste of I've never thought about the word free, because there I was I'd lied to my employer. I had taken the day And I had told them I was somewhere else and I had gone to this thing for myself.
Yeah.
And so here I am completely out of integrity, getting paid by somebody else to sit in a place where I'm prospecting for my side hustle that hasn't even launched yet. And I realize when she walks on the stage, holy shit, that's what I want. And I didn't even know what that meant. I just knew that I wanted the freedom that she seemed to have. She was writing books. She was clearly writing for Oprah. She had written her first book. She was now talking about that first book on a stage. I didn't know what I would write about. I didn't know what I would speak about. I was scared to think
Yes.
about being on that stage. That is the moment. And so I want to hit pause and I want to talk to the person, you, right now listening to us. I want to talk to you because I need you to start to pay attention to those moments. You don't have to have the answers to change your life. You have to have that moment where you go, I want something more for myself. And what I wanted is I wanted to be able to go to an event without lying to my boss. Well, I could have just not lied, but you know what I mean. I wanted to
Yes.
be able to go to an event because I was going to go to an event. I wanted to be able to work when I wanted to work, but I did not know how the hell do you go from that moment to knowing what the hell the right next step is? Because you're right. What happens next is, well, you're dumb. You got nothing to offer. You're this, you're that. Like, how did you go from, okay, there's all these dudes sitting around the table. I'm basically the secretary, no offense to secretaries, in the corner. And
Right.
I am sitting here being exposed to something that I'm not part of this club.
Yes. So the first thing, all those doubts came rushing in. And then I learned something a long time ago that if you're watching someone do something and you feel a little bit jealous, like,
Yep.
look what they have, or angst around it, which I had, like, I wanted what they had, even though I didn't totally get it. Whenever you have a feeling of jealousy or angst or you want it, ask yourself, what do they have that you want? Like, get really clear. What is it about their life that you think is so attractive or you'd like to go through it? Because I had to get clear about what I wanted. And in that moment, I thought, they get to be their own boss. Like, that's what they have that I have never had. So I think clarity in terms of what you want is the first big step. You talk about that a lot. What do you want? And so once I got clear on, I don't want a job anymore, I want to call the shots, then I had to start thinking, what would I do? Because I had no clue. So for the next few months, I kind of went through this process that now I teach called the sweet spot, which is figuring out what might you want to do.
Wow. Okay. One of the topics that I just have to talk about this today because I'm feeling it is overwhelm. I am feeling so overwhelmed today because I have to pack. I have to get in the car when I'm done talking to you about overwhelm. I have to drive to Boston. I am going to a funeral for a friend and I'm giving a eulogy, which is both a huge honor and a massive reason to feel overwhelmed. And so it is kind of one of those life imitates art moments right now where we were planning on talking about overwhelm. And I roll in here behind the microphone. I am a hot mess right now. I didn't even put on underwear yet today. I've got on ripped jeans, a jog bra, and a yellow t-shirt. And I just realized that the t-shirt says mentally elsewhere. And so it may feel a little odd that the person that you're going to have a conversation with about overwhelm is a hot mess with a messy bun. And, but you know what? I've always envisioned the Mel Robbins podcast to be like taking a walk with a really good friend. And when you take a walk with a really good friend, you show up as you are. And you walk and you talk and you sort things out together. And so today's episode I'm really excited for because you and I are going on a walk together. And I've got 5 other listeners that are going to join that walk with us. And as we walk and we talk, we are going to unpack this topic of overwhelm. And I've got this framework that you're going to love. There are 2 types of overwhelm. And seeing which type of overwhelm that you're in, it's going to help you take the steps to deal with being overwhelmed, to become calmer, to tap into your power. You probably notice that my voice is starting to gain a little bit of steadiness. That's because I know what's coming. I know that as you and I talk through these frameworks and as I hear other listeners like you sharing what's going on in their life and why they're overwhelmed, and as we talk about what you can do to face those situations in life, I'm starting to feel a little steadier because I know by the end of a good walk with friends, you always feel better. And I want you to stay until the end because at the very end, you're going to hear from a listener named Michelle. And she has so much joy in her voice because she has applied what you're about to learn and what I'm about to remind myself of when it comes to overwhelm. So let's dig into our first question, which comes from a listener named Laura.
Hi, Mel. This is Laura, and here's my question. How can I identify when can I push harder and when to pause or give myself some grace? How can I adapt all the things I'm learning in your podcast to my reality? And I can explain. I'm a 35-year-old mom of a very, very active 2-year-old. I have a full-time job, and I'm planning on doing a lot of things, including training for my 3rd marathon. But I also suffer from anxiety, and I have the habit of procrastinating. I listen to all of your podcasts. I love them, and everything makes a lot of sense to me. And I really want to do all the things that you teach us to become the best version of myself. But the truth is that almost every day, life happens, and I end up doing nothing. Like, I wake up, I make breakfast, get my kid ready for school, get myself ready for work, and I'm off to work by 8:30 a.m. And then I have a full time of work, and I finish work around 5:30 p.m. Then I get home, and I try to be with my kid. At 7:30, we start our night routine. And by 8:30, when my baby boy hopefully is asleep, I feel exhausted. I only want to have dinner and go to bed. But I also want to fit in a morning routine, exercise, time to work in the 1,000 things I have in my to-do list, social life, and the list of things that I want to do in one day goes on and on and on, including meditating, cooking better food. It goes on. How can I prioritize and adapt $1 million morning routine to my reality? Should I expect more from myself? Should I push harder, maybe at night, wake up earlier? Or should I just do what I can? How do you fit in time to do all the personal growth when it really feels I do not have the time and physical or mental energy to do it? Thank you very much, Mel.
Oh my gosh, Laura, I'm so glad you're on the walk today because hearing you list off all the things you need to do, I suddenly feel less overwhelmed. I mean, can we just have a laugh about that? That when somebody else is more overwhelmed than you, you're like, oh, okay, thank God, it's not just me. So one of the things I want to say to you, Laura, and to you listening, is that life is a marathon, not a sprint. There are times in your life where it's going to be overwhelming all the time. And one of those times is when you have kids that are not yet in a full school day. I remember those chaotic days of trying to get our kids out the door in the car to daycare so I could get to a full-time job, commute in, work all day, commute back out, make it back to daycare in time before daycare closed and they started to fine you and you feel like the world's worst parent because you're showing up when the lights are off and your kid is there alone, and then get home and then transition and then get them into it is exhausting. And one of the big lies that we tell ourselves when it comes to overwhelm is we tell ourselves, if I just hurry, I can fit more in. And right now, your life is not about fitting more in. It's about a level of acceptance for where you are. Because I hear in what you're talking about this resistance that you don't have enough time, that you can't fit it all in. And the truth is, you're doing the most important thing in the world right now. You are taking care of a small child. You are working. You are taking care of yourself. And that is what you need to focus on. And you listening, you might not have a little kid at home anymore or at all, but maybe you're taking care of aging parents. That was my friend Joni. Joni was the primary caregiver for her mother for the last 2 years as she was slowly dying and suffering from dementia. I never saw Joni. Why? Because she was in a very draining situation where she was caring for somebody with a chronic illness, and all she could do was get up, do that, take care of herself, go to sleep. And that brings me to this framework for overwhelm that has profoundly helped me. And as I explain this to you, I not only want you to listen, but as we continue this conversation and this metaphorical walk together, I want you to start to take this framework, the 2 types of overwhelm, and not only apply it to your life, but see if you can apply it to the situations you're going to hear other listeners describe. Because the 2 types of overwhelm are legitimate overwhelm. So your life circumstances demand overwhelm from you. And Laura, with a full-time job and a kid under 2, and I can't tell if she was married or not, so I'm going to assume she's a single parent, she is in a period of life where she is in legitimate overwhelm. Joni, my friend who was caring for her mom, who just recently passed away, she was in a 2 to 3 year period of legitimate overwhelm. The demands of her life created overwhelm. Our daughter, who's about to graduate from college and who is a singer-songwriter, and there's not a defined career path, she right now is careening into a couple months of legitimate overwhelm because of college ending and an uncertain future. And I right now am in a state of legitimate overwhelm. I have a friend who recently died. I am delivering a eulogy. I'm going to be in this legitimate overwhelm until I get through this service. And so when it comes to legitimate overwhelm, the only thing that you can do is to have tools that I'm going to unpack in just a minute. So that's the first type of overwhelm. Now let me explain the second one. And the second one is where most of us live. The second type of overwhelm is lifestyle overwhelm. That's when your whole life feels overwhelming. When you're just so used to feeling overwhelmed and busy and to-do lists everywhere and stuff is a mess and things are on the counter and you've overcommitted yourself and you can never say no and you're always last on your list and you don't know how to get out of it because it's become a vicious cycle. Your whole life is overwhelmed. That's the second type of overwhelm. And so, Laura, you have legitimate overwhelm, which means you need a strategy to ratchet down the stress that you're putting on yourself. And one of the most important things that you can do in terms of a strategy is you have to tell yourself, this is a temporary period of my life. And what I need to do as a strategy is I need to prioritize my own well-being, my own stamina. Because remember, this period of your life isn't the sprint, it's a marathon. And so one of the most important strategies that you need is you need to get more rest. That's it. Instead of piling things on, instead of adding more to your life, you need to get more rest. If it's available to you and you can get help, whether it's from your partner or your parents, or maybe other moms in your mom group or that you know that have kids the same age, maybe you can swap time on the weekends so you can get time alone to do something like going to a yoga class or doing something for yourself. But your tool right now is ratchet down the pressure and stress. Remind yourself that this is a temporary period of your life where you are legitimately going to feel overwhelmed and it will pass. And with regard to your question about the morning routine, the $1 million morning routine, which by the way, is something I explained in our episode about morning routines. And I will link to that episode in the show notes for you. But my $1 million morning routine, which is grounded in science and helps me feel like $1 million and gives my days structure, it's 20 to 30 minutes long, tops. I don't care how overwhelmed you are, you can fit it in. You get up when the alarm rings, you make the bed, You high-five the mirror. You pull on your exercise clothes. You get outside and get a little bright light, and that could even mean sticking your head out of a window if you can't leave your 2-year-old, but you could take your 2-year-old on a walk, and you spend 10 to 20 minutes moving your body. And you can do that in front of your laptop by streaming a workout. You do those things every 20 minutes, and you will feel less stressed. You will feel less overwhelmed, and you will feel less resentment and pressure to fit it all in. So again, if you identify with Laura or with me or with my friend Joni, and your life is in a stretch on this marathon that requires stamina, and you have a legitimate reason to be overwhelmed because of life circumstances, cut yourself some slack. Know that this will not be forever, and focus on the strategy of protecting your stamina and doing simple things that help you with your well-being. The $1 million morning routine, 20 minutes is all you need, is one of those things. There are simple tools that you can use that act like lifelines in your life. And those tools are meaningful mantras, temporary or permanent tattoos, or there are ways that you can use even a simple Post-it note as a environmental cue. That's what a researcher calls it. You can use a simple Post-it note to act like a lifeline, to remind you that you have the power inside of you to face something. And in those moments where it really counts and you're trying to level up, that yes, you can show up in this moment and you can perform your best. And so while we're going to start with the tattoo story, which is a great story, we're going to get to a deeper topic here. And by the time you're done listening to this episode, you're going to have a phrase that you've identified that will act like a lifeline for you moving forward. And because I always say this is not just a listening podcast, it's a doing one, I'm going to ask you to do something specific. And no, it's not to go get a tattoo. So on the topic of tattoos, if you have a tattoo or you know someone who does, you know that every tattoo has a story. And mine begins just a few weeks before our 15th wedding anniversary. Can you believe this? We've been married 26 years. So this would have been 11 years ago, right? 11 years ago. Yeah, 11 years ago. 11 years ago was 2012. And Chris, let's just set the table for everybody, because 11 years ago, our life looked really different. 2012, you were still in the restaurant business. We were 800 grand in debt. We were struggling with drinking issues, and we were trying to make the ends meet.
And we thought a tattoo was going to save us.
Hey, we thought it would distract us. We decided that
it was our anniversary.
It was our anniversary. And so we decided that it would be cool if we got tattoos on the date of our 15th wedding anniversary. And
provided it wasn't the same tattoo.
Well, see, this is the thing. I wanted to get matching tattoos. I thought it would be super cool if you and I got the exact same tattoo on our 15th wedding anniversary. And what was your response?
Never.
Yeah, I think it was no fucking way. I think you said that is so cheesy. We are bound for divorce if we get matching tattoos. We are not doing that. And so that was kind of my idea. And Chris just shot it out of the sky. Boom, not happening. And so we got.
Do you remember what my reaction was to even getting it? We had been talking about it maybe a little bit.
I don't remember. Do you remember yours?
Was it an out of the blue idea that, hey, let's do this for our anniversary, or we had talked about it before?
I think we had talked about how we both wanted to get one, and then we decided we'd get it for our 15th, and I thought we'd get matching. You said absolutely not. And then all of a sudden we went into our corners, and we were individually thinking about our tattoos. And as the date of our anniversary, August 24th, came closer and closer, and to the appointment, I started to panic because I had no idea what I wanted for my tattoo. And then all of a sudden, you guys, Chris walks into the room one day and says, I've figured out what my tattoo is going to be. Why don't you tell him the story? Because I wanted to kill you when you told me what it was going to be.
I grew up as a ski racer, and was competing in races every weekend in my teenage years. And I was always that kid in the starting gate that was shaken like a leaf and worried about not the race, but the outcome. I was in my head thinking about what was going to be my time and how it was going to line up. And
would it freak you out?
Yeah, it was always about the result.
Yep.
The end game, if you will, for
Yep.
me. Or at least this was the observation that ultimately my dad had of me. And my dad was often at these races, and he helped me see the racing and the course a little bit differently by constantly suggesting that I just take it one gate at a time. To just, rather than think about the big picture or the end game, just one gate at a time. And along the years, my dad and I would converse about this without ever necessarily giving it a name of a philosophy, if you will. But he wrote a letter to me about it one day. And that was my my tattoo wake up call, that I decided to pull the handwriting off of a letter my dad authored about just taking things one gate at a time. And so that became my tattoo idea.
And so describe where it is and what it is.
I put this tattoo on my forearm, on my left forearm, and I didn't necessarily have a vision for having it kind of be oriented such that I could read it really easily, but ultimately it was the tattoo artist who suggested kind of the right placement of it. But it just says the word one and the word gate, one gate, written in my dad's handwriting.
It's beautiful. And so, being the shallow piece of shit that I am at times, when Chris announced that he had figured out his tattoo and that he was going to take his dead father's handwritten letter to a tattoo artist and have that tattoo artist lift those two words, one gate, in his father's handwriting and put it on his left forearm where he could see it and have as a reminder, I thought that is the best damn idea. And now I have no idea what the hell I am going to tattoo on my body. I was so pissed and so jealous that you had such a good idea. And you guys, I freaked out and stressed out until the night before we were supposed to get tattoos. The night before we were going to go into this appointment, our 15th wedding anniversary, I still had no idea what I was going to put on my body. And then luckily, a friend of ours who was one of my very first clients when I became a life coach, Deva, who owns the amazing store in Boston called Matsu. She stopped by to say hi, and we started talking about the tattoo. And I said, I have no idea what I want. She agreed. Chris's idea, that was a really good idea. Really good idea. And I
didn't know Deva was the origin of this idea for you.
Yeah. So what happened is I started saying, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, I know what it should be. And I'm like, you do? What should it be? And she said, it should say it shall be. I said, what? What do you mean it should say it shall be? She said, you say it all the time. I said, no, I don't. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. She said, Mel, you have coached me for years. You always say, if you put in the work and you hold the belief that'll happen, at some point, it shall be. I had honestly never realized that I had used that phrase when coaching other people. And as she said it in that way, it just kind of went clunk. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the words it shall be on the inside of my right wrist. And it'll be both a reminder to me that if I do the work, if I have faith, if I keep my head down, and if I give up my timeline, it shall be. It'll all work out. It'll be fine. And So that was that. Now, meanwhile, there's another twist to this story. Because do you remember what happened on our actual 15th wedding anniversary?
Do I ever? That's the funniest part of the whole story.
Okay, well, tell everybody.
Well, just that Mel, you were in radio at the time.
Yeah, it was
right?
when I was a radio host. So you guys, Chris was still in the restaurant business.
So
we were struggling financially.
She was doing some show in Boston, and it wasn't the tattoo artist. You had some show talking about tattoos,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Throwback. And
all these people called in.
and they suggested like the best tattoo parlor in town.
Correct.
If you're going to get a tattoo, you have to go to this guy.
Yes.
And you, of course, took it upon yourself to book us the appointment, which was at that point had to have been 6 months out.
Yes, and they had a huge wait list. So you couldn't even get in until like 4 months out. We booked this thing 6 months out, you guys.
So you
put
plan
down
it
this
for
big ass deposit.
for our anniversary.
We have a babysitter. We're going into Boston. We got our appointment. We're about to pull on the Mass Pike. And what happens?
We're pulling out of the driveway, and you're like, well, where we go? Let's get the address of this place. And then you said, well, let me just call him just to make sure, let him know we're coming. And you call him, and sure enough, the guy says, I don't know, we got you on the books for next week.
And I start pleading with him. Oh, no, you can't. We made this 6 months. No. It's next week. It's a week from today. But that's not our anniversary. I never would have screwed this up. This must be a mistake. Can you just fit us in now? No.
And we were going away. We couldn't even make the following
Yeah,
week
but
happen
also
anyway.
the thing was it was supposed to be on the anniversary.
Right.
So now here we are with a babysitter. We have our tattoos. You've got your letter. I've got my phrase. We have no appointment. I start calling tattoo parlors because we decide, let's just head into Boston. And I'm like, how hard could this be? Do you know the first 5 or 6 tattoo parlors that I called were booked? Like no openings. I didn't know you couldn't just walk into a tattoo parlor. Who the hell is getting all these tattoos? So I finally call the 6th or 7th place. And it was a place that was right around the corner from this apartment that we used to live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, when we first moved to Boston before we had kids for you to go to graduate school. And the guy answers the phone and he says, sure, come on in. And then he says, what's the name? And I say, Mel Robbins. And he goes, you mean from WTKK, Mel Robbins? I thought I recognized this voice. I love your show. My wife's a huge fan of yours. Come on in. It turned out to be a guy that listened to my old radio show. So we drive to this place. The guy is this amazing, big, bearded teddy bear of a guy. He gives us this big old bear hug. Chris goes first because here's the next twist that happened. It had completely been lost on me that I hadn't even picked out a font or handwriting. And so I had the phrase, it shall be, but I had no idea what I wanted it to look like or how big it was going to be. So while Chris got his tattoo, I pulled up Microsoft Outlook and I started going through the font choices and ended up picking the only font that looked somewhat cool, which turned out to be something called like Zaftigs or Davbigs or Zad. It was like a Z. Printed it out on his printer. And that became what I permanently put on my body. And I was having like doubts and second guesses, and Chris's looked so good. But I was just like, why didn't I think that I should have like thought about the font?
It looks a little bit like your handwriting though, so that's good.
It's okay. I mean, it's fine. I love my tattoo. I love my tattoo. And so I've got these sort of curved, it shall be right on my inside wrist. And big hooky things, and we'll if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see it. We'll put it on the stories. And the thing that I love about this, and this is why it's so important for us to talk about meaningful mantras today, and environmental cues that you can use to help you stay steady, to help you tap into that courage and that confidence and that power that's inside of you. And over the years, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at this tattoo. And these words, it shall be, they are a lifeline for me. When I think about moments where I was failing at something or life was going off the rails, I would see those words, "It shall be." And I'd take a deep breath and I'd put my head down and I'd say, "Mel, you just got to keep believing it's going to all work out. You got to keep putting in the work. If you're a good, kind person, it'll happen. Maybe not on your timeline, but just keep going." When times were tough, these 3 words, "it shall be," reminded me that this is just a moment. And like all moments, this will pass. And now our puppy, Homie, is like wanting to go to the bathroom. It shall be.
No, but it thinking about the question that Jonathan wrote in and saying how you're so intentional in everything that you do, it was a very thoughtful question, and I would agree that your application of that in life is very pronounced, and interesting how you didn't necessarily see it like Deva saw it. And how the only thing that was not intentional about it was the scramble to get the right tattoo before the evening itself.
Well, you know what's great about this?
Actually, I shouldn't say that, because you booked the appointment. We had it on the anniversary. Like, we were organized. We were
Yeah.
ready to roll. There
You
was
know what I like,
intentionality.
though? The entire story of the tattoo is a demonstration of the philosophy, "it shall be." Because nothing went according to plan. And yet we just took it one gate at a time. And I was fierce in my belief that it was all just going to work out. What are the odds that the appointment is on the wrong date, or that the first 5 places I call are not available for appointments, but the one that is happens to be a guy that listened to my little local Saturday radio show and recognized my name and voice? Like, it's just a little bit of optimism that acts like a lifeline for me. And it reminds me that it's going to work out, that I have the power within me to face things. That's how I've been using this phrase, "it shall be," over the last 11 years, because these have not been the easiest 11 years of our life.
I would argue some of the hardest.
The hardest, for sure. I mean, when I think about the state that you were in when you left the restaurant business just 2 years after I got this tattoo, and you just checked out of life. You're like, "I'm getting sober. I have to heal. I have to take care of myself." And for 2 years, you were just comatose. And I'm like in survival mode. And I would look at this, my tattoo, "it shall be, it shall be." And it gave me faith that if I just kept working hard, we'd figure it out. That we'd figure out how to pay the bills, that I would figure out how to build this business, that you would figure out how to heal and find your way back to yourself and to me. And even things like moving up here to southern Vermont and how hard that was. And feeling like I've just turned my whole life upside down. And yet there was this deeper knowing that drove our decision to move and to change our life profoundly, from living outside of Boston to being in this tiny rural town. And on those days that I just felt so lost, I would look at my wrist and go, "it shall be. It's going to work out. Like, I can do this." And even with the podcast, everybody was like, "You know how crowded that is. You know how there's 5 million podcasts." I was like, you know what? I'm playing the long game. It shall be. I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to go for it. And I even feel that like when our kids are struggling, like it helps me, this phrase, "it shall be," to put almost like a beacon out in the future. It's a reminder that at some point, the road ahead is easier and great things happen. And it gives me faith to keep going.
I think the location of that tattoo is also properly aligned with you and your own just being reminded of that, right? Because if you had that tattoo on the back of your shoulder,
I'd never see it.
Where you weren't seeing it all day, every day. You had always wanted to put it right, something, whatever it was you were thinking.
Well, why get a tattoo and hide it?
Right.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.